All right, check the mic going live right here during the preseason action. We promised that we would go live if something important happened or if we had some kind of reaction specifically to Anthony Richardson's performance. And there's not much to react to performance-wise, Sam, just 2 for 3 passing. But the big story, Anthony Richardson leaving the game injured after getting sacked by David Ojabo. Your initial reaction here?
Yeah, I mean, this, I think, is worst case scenario for Anthony Richardson and maybe for the Colts as well. Remember, part of the problem with Richardson and why they've gone and brought in competition and brought in Daniel Jones is not just that Richardson hasn't played particularly well or, hasn't become the player that they thought he would be. It's that they can't rely on him to stay healthy either. Like, he's in that Jimmy Garoppolo world where even just looking at his injury history, you would be questioning whether you can rely on him as being the starter going forward. The Colts effectively said, look, he hasn't shown that he can stay healthy for 17 games yet, let alone be a high-level starter if and when he does. So then you have this preseason game, and it lasts a couple of drives, and then boom, you have a breakdown in protection. I don't know if that was his fault or not, but it was a blown protection. The line slides left. They leave somebody completely unblocked coming from the right side. It clocks Richardson. Not only does he get, blasted, maybe he was responsible for the sack in the first place, but then it injures him and knocks him out of the game. And, it seems like it's a finger dislocation rather than anything like a, rib injury or anything else, like a guy falling on you. But still, again, for a guy big, strong, athletic, every hit Richardson takes seems to do damage.
Yeah, we both know football pretty well, but I'm still very cautious to immediately assign blame on, protection breakdown or this or that. But I will say Kurt Warner, Jeff Schwartz, a few other people who know protections and are willing to stick their neck out there saying, yeah, that's probably on the quarterback, throwing hot behind the extra rusher being Ojabo. Mean of the Ravens with their little sim pressure in the preseason. But yeah, that needs to get picked up. And Richardson was completely blindsided there. I'm trying to break down how often he left. I have him at 3 out of 15 career starts that he has left early due to injury. Of course, not including this preseason game. But this has just been a common thing in his career. Not only injuries, but in the middle of a game, right? Not finishing games due to injuries and then missing a lot of time due to injuries. And we talk a lot about it's not about being, 6'5", 230 and durable. It's about not taking the hits. And whether that's because of a protection issue, whether that's lowering your shoulder, running power, whether that's not going out of bounds when you should and taking that extra hit, he has not only taken the extra hits, but he's gotten hurt on a bunch of them. If it's just a dislocated finger, fine. But it still ends up being, man, he's supposed to play the whole half. He's playing for his job, and he's supposed to play in the entire half. So you lose out on those valuable reps. And that's, at this point in his career, the reps are extremely important for Richardson because that's the excuse that I continue to make for him is like, all right, hasn't played a lot of football. What should we expect? Hasn't played a lot of football. Part of that's his own doing. Part of that is just what happened coming out of Florida. So missing out on the reps might be the most important thing here, is assuming he avoided any more serious injury than the finger.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a big part of it as well. But I think the injury stuff is significant, even if it's a minor injury. I mean, the whole point is your organization is now saying out loud in public that they think you're brittle, essentially, that you have not shown them that you can last through an entire season's worth of NFL action. There are quarterbacks that go 5 years without missing a game. And you just said that his career rate is leaving a game once every 5 games, not every 5 years, every 5 games. So, yeah, okay, maybe it's a minor injury and maybe it's not going to keep you out long term, but it's another one. It's just another, one that you're stacking on the list now. And when they are, totting these things up, like this dude is left with this, he's left with this, he's left with this. This is just another one to the list. Like, you can't keep giving them reasons to put you on the bench because eventually they're going to do it. Daniel Jones is out there and is a relatively steady hand and maybe has some upside to his play as well with the supporting cast around him. You can't keep giving them these reasons to bench you.
The two things that I'll slightly overreact to on the positive side for the Colts, A.D. Mitchell was getting open. And, the first completion from Richardson, it was like Peyton Manning to Reggie Wayne old school, deep comeback along the sideline. Richardson was getting hit on that play as well. Got it to him for the completion. A.D. Mitchell was open a couple times. There was also a miscommunication with Daniel Jones later on a very slow developing double move that, really epitomized A.D. Mitchell's rookie season last year. But he looked like he was getting open. Dig route, comeback, couple routes there. And then my other overreaction was Tyler Warren. They fed him a tight end screen, a couple quick short passes over the middle. It does feel like if Richardson was to win the job, a guy who completed about 50% of his passes last year, if they're trying to bump up the completion percentage, if they're trying to get some more easy ones for Richardson, it does feel like Tyler Warren, just from a couple passes, the way they're using them, little stick routes, little screen passes, that might be the easy button that the Colts are pressing for Anthony Richardson, this season if he is the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is changing my opinion that Tyler Warren is a very, very good football player and a great pick for the Colts and a perfect fit for this offense. Like this is the player that they needed. It's the player that they've been missing for a couple of years now. Every time you watch Penn State play football, Tyler Warren was the best player on the field on offense. I don't imagine that's a complete figment of our imagination. He's a legit player, and just from this brief preseason debut, I think he'll be a really good addition to this offense, whichever quarterback is starting for them.
Just to answer the chat, I do believe it was probably on Anthony Richardson, protection-wise, that was we've got people saying, it's scat protection, that's 5 in pass pro and got to throw behind the extra rusher. That was my initial read on it. Again,
right.
Less willing to stick my neck out than, say, Kurt Warner, Jeff Schwartz, other people who really understand protections. It did look like it was on Anthony Richardson. And even if it wasn't, ultimately it's him kind of getting things set up at the line of scrimmage as well, and they certainly were not prepared for it.
But here's the thing, like the biggest catastrophe off that is the injury thing, right? It's like you got blasted and you got hurt immediately. Like if you're part of the sales pitch, whether it's true or not, for a guy like Richardson is you're like, he's huge. Josh Allen takes hits like that and just people bounce off him, right? Like that's part of the thing. But every time Richardson takes one of those hits, he gets hurt and has to leave the game. So that's the biggest problem. If it turns out it was also his mistake in the first place, I mean, you just doubled the screw up, right? You got hurt and it was your fault. I mean, that's like absolute worst case scenario. That's a complete catastrophe if it turns out it was his goof and protection in the first place. So whether or not it was is almost besides the point. Like, I think it's already terrible that he got hurt off the back of it. If it was him screwing it up, it's like an absolute nightmare.
We anticipated coming into tonight, Sam, that we were going to have some sort of reaction to Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones and their battle, particularly Richardson playing, as I was corrected, a quarter and a half. So most of the first half, we were going to get to see Anthony Richardson. Instead, it is something familiar, right? He is leaving early with the injury after getting sacked, unblocked pressure from David Ajabu. So not ideal for Richardson in the preseason debut this year.
No. And they were saying, they were asking this question on the broadcast, like what happens if it's close, right? What happens if the competition between Daniel Jones and Richardson throughout preseason training camp is close? Which guy do you go with? And they were sort of saying, like we've been saying, it's probably Richardson in that case. But we're now, this is the first preseason game, and Richardson has already been injured twice to open the door for Daniel Jones. Early in training camp or mini camps, I forget which, but like earlier in the offseason, and then basically the first time he steps foot on the field in real action in preseason. Again, I don't know how many chances you can give them to give the job to Daniel Jones before they just say, like, it's his.
If it's close, you and I always said it would be the draft pick, right? It's still the somewhat unknown rather than the far more known quantity that is Daniel Jones.
But how many? But how many times can Richardson get injured before that's no longer the case? Is my point.
Once, as soon as he gets hurt, Daniel Jones comes in. The other aspect of it too. They could not have a different statistical profile, particularly last year, where Daniel Jones completed like 13% higher passes, higher completion percentage, and Richardson almost had an extra yard per attempt. Think about that for a minute. It was 13% difference in completion percentage, but Richardson almost a yard per attempt more per throw, which, by the way, is a better number than completion percentage, just as a starting point. But you can't live life like that, right? You can't live life in the NFL going 8 for 20 for 200 yards. That is just not sustainable. But just stylistically, if they're close, it doesn't mean you're getting the same thing. I think you're getting completely different players stylistically between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, other than their running ability, which we've said a million times can be tapped into by Shane Steichen in that offense.
Right. But this is the equalizer, I think, is that, I think if it's close between the two, you're absolutely going to go with Richardson as a potential higher upside player and a guy that, once you smooth off the rough edges, you can get a really good player. But the thing that changes the math is if they keep getting reminded that they can't trust him to stay healthy. And that's, like I said, in this preseason, that's already happened twice. I don't know how many more of those he has before they just say, you know what, we can't rely on him. It doesn't even matter that Daniel Jones is the backup. It's just, we can't start him anymore.
Anything else worth overreacting to halfway into night one of the preseason while we have some people here?
I mean, Keaton Mitchell looked fantastic as well coming back. Like remember, he burst onto the scene as a rookie, was spectacular. Obviously, it's Derrick Henry's job. It's Derrick Henry's backfield. But Keaton Mitchell is a fun change of pace, completely different, type of running back to Derrick Henry. He looked all the way back in this preseason game.
And LeJounte Wester, the rookie out of Colorado. So you have two undersized, shifty, dynamic type playmaker types added to the Ravens. I'm not added in Keaton Mitchell, but, if he's healthy as another change of pace with Derrick Henry, those dudes definitely stood out for the Ravens. So, hey, it's night one of the preseason. Check the mic. We are going to go live anytime big, important stuff happens. Like tomorrow night when Shedeur Sanders gets his start. We will react. Lukewarm initial reactions to Shedeur Sanders tomorrow night. All right, stick with us. Never know what's going to happen tonight. Ashton Genty plays football later, hopefully. So
yes.
We'll react if needed. Check the mic.